I think that was really worthwhile, I would say, for members to have a look for themselves, but we'll discuss that when we get to that item on the agenda. Can I ask, are there any apologies for absence? No? Okay. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Item 3 is urgent business. I understand that there's no urgent items of business to consider today. Item 4 is the minutes of the last meeting. Can we agree those minutes? Thank you. So we'll move on then to our first item on today's agenda, which is item 4, land on Rosebery Street to the rear of Hatherley Street, Liverpool 8. And there's a number of speakers for and against. Can I first of all invite Ali Siddiqui, Agent Architect, to address the committee? I think that's by virtual. Are you there?
Yeah, present. Thank you.
Okay, if you'd like to address the committee, please.
Thank you. Is the presentation going to be present on the screen?
That will appear very shortly in terms of the information we have before us. Should be on screen now for you.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, good morning, everybody. I understand you took a site visit today. I hope the weather was okay for you and everybody was not too drenched. So, yeah, next slide, please. So we're looking at the land on Rosebery Street. Actually at the moment it's a partially construction site, but when we started the project it was a derelict site which was not used and kind of overgrown. As you can see there, it was not used for any kind of facility or use and was encouraging just an unsightly scene along that very important street scene, which creates a kind of block at the end of two community spaces, one being a mosque and another being a community centre, and that little enclave of the residential use was just being unused for any purpose at all there. Okay, next please. So this is the site in a bit on some site photographs of what it used to be, a little bit different to what you would have seen when you went down to site today. But as you can see, there's a big void space in what would have been a historic residential grain of an important part of Toxteth there, and it has been highlighted as one of the parts of regeneration within that area because of its historic nature and the surrounding areas and the community spaces around it, which they can tap into. So, you know, more residents within that space kind of would have the facilities within a kind of commutable distance, community spaces, mosques, shops. You're only a stone's throw away from the universities as well, and so there's a lot of amenities nearby. So it seems like there's a very unused space for what it has in its surrounding areas as well. Next, please. So the proposal is for 11 townhouses, 6 bedrooms. They, meet all the space standards. The new Part M within Liverpool's planning policies. They are generous in their spaces under bedrooms upstairs, and each contain family bathrooms as well. Next, please. So the design tries to interpret the local vernacular of the adjacent residential language and interprets that in a modern way. It's using the kind of London stock brick with a modern roof interpretation of the slate roof in a terms of metal clad roof, with these dormers in a modern minimalist fashion, but the proportions of the windows, the doors, the width between the bays, the housing types, they're all taken as proportionality from the historical grain and manners of the surrounding areas. So what we try to do is to marry in the kind of interpretive language of the streets and the context, and then reinterpret that into a modern setting and a modern clean look, which then uplifts the kind of area in terms of its feel and attraction into a really important area of Liverpool and Toxteth, so that the regeneration that is earmarked for this area does come with quality as well, and something that we feel the area kind of deserves as well. That it is just not a repetition of anything that we've seen around the area, but it's something that's going to contribute in terms of design quality as well. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Do members of the committee have any questions? Councillor Malone?
Thanks, Chair. From the last drawing you had, and also in view of the site visit, I'd like to ask how wide the pavement is in front of the property, because it was somewhat difficult to gauge because we could see the edge of the slab, but I'm not sure about the car parking, whether that will encroach onto the current curb line of the property. So if you could just give me the width post-development, please.
Would it be okay if I jump in there? It's Yaqub here, Muhammad Ali Sadiq's colleague at Footprint Design. Existing, we have an existing pavement, which you would have seen an existing pavement line and curb line, and the proposed frontage of the slab and also properties. The proposal is to maintain a 2-meter wide footpath from in front of the properties to the edge of the curb line, to the curb line. The parking spaces are then sort of jolted across towards the road to allow for that to maintain that pedestrian footpath in front of the properties. I hope that clarifies your query.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Maloney?
Can I just ask for a point of clarification, please, Chair? It's just to see whether there will be, how high any curb will be, bearing in mind the propensity these days for motorists to park on pavements. I'm just concerned that that 2 meters will be maintained by the nature of the curb. Thanks, Chair.
Absolutely. So the proposal is to provide standard 2.4 by 6 meter parking bays in tandem with a 150 mil raised curb along the frontage between the parking spaces and the pavement line.
Okay, thank you for that. Do any other members have any questions for Mr. Sadiqi? Councillor Bennett?
Can I just ask the applicant, the local plan policy H3 about 20% of the homes to be affordable, but there's nothing on the application about whether there will be any affordable homes.
There's also on the note, there is a chapter in relation to affordable housing, if you want to read that as well.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether if the applicant would like to answer that particular question in relation to affordable homes and rents.
Can't remember off the top of my head, so we'll just leave that to the text that was provided with that. Sorry.
The question was in relation to affordable homes. Are there any, you've got these properties, are they affordable rented accommodation? Or any of them are?
I'm not too sure how that will be from the client's end and what was written in that report. Because it's been maybe about 3 years. So yeah, can you remember? I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, I'm unsure what the client's proposal is for these dwellings from the original application dated back from 2017. I'm unsure whether or not they are for the rental market or resale. So I have to go back and have a look at the documents, so apologies on that.
Okay, thanks for that. But we'll ask the officer in the summary to clarify the position on affordable homes in relation to this application. Do members have any other questions? Councillor Cardwell?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, they're 6-bedroom homes, yeah? All of them. So how many cars per home are you expecting? Have you given any thought to that?
We have a total of 11 number parking spaces for the 11 properties.
So one per property?
Correct, that's right, yes. From the previous presentation, my apologies, from the previous planning committee presentation, the highways comments, there were no sort of adverse comments related to the parking proposals on the application at all. Also, I've just had a sort of clarification on the affordable housing front. The client has just confirmed that they will be providing 20% affordable housing for the proposal.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Do members have any other questions before we move on? Councillor Keys?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so just following on from the previous question, have you considered the impact of sort of Friday afternoon and worshippers coming to the mosque? I've been told that there are sometimes 4,000 additional people there, all coming in cars. And have you thought about it and put any sort of mitigation into your plans or thoughts?
Yeah, I think that was something that will be covered in the transport report. But in terms of the Friday prayers, there is a kind of, for every resident in that area, for about half an hour on a Friday. Usually, that is mitigated through kind of transport plans within the mosque's planning transport plan, which the mosque has to look out for how they they kind of cope with the influx of cars into the area, whereas the resident of this is kind of the everyday using and for the immediate residents there and their amenities as well. So which the transport plan does cover the impact of that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hanson?
Thank you, Chair. Given the area and its location, what does the applicant mean by affordable housing? In effect, what I'm asking is, what's the price of the property is going to be when they go on the open market?
We're unsure in terms of the proposed pricing band. If that information can be provided by our applicant at a date, we can very easily forward that on to you guys for consideration. That's not a problem. But at the moment, we do not have that information at hand.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other members wishing to ask any questions. So could I just thank Mr. Sadiq and Mr. Malik for their presentation, and could we move on now to those people who've registered to speak and opposing this particular application. And first of all, there are quite a number of speakers. Could I invite Dr. Mohammed Mayoub to address the committee, please?
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak. So my name is Dr. Mohammed Mayoub. I'm Secretary Trustee of Liverpool Muslim Society. I'm representing a Rahma Mosque and about 40,000 Muslims across the city who are currently losing their trust in Liverpool City Council. So today we are here to object on the plan that has many material planning matters, issues, and social cohesion, most importantly for us, social cohesion concerns that we wish to bring to your attention today. So our concerns, we really question the likelihood the development will be delivered by the property developer. Jew Street in L8 development by the same developer was halted and objected to by public campaign backed by L8 Matters. Other developers across the city becoming bankrupt due to COVID-19 and Brexit. This is disproportionately impacting L8 residents. In, for example, Kingsley Road residents. The developer, we also share with them Hatherley Street and properties in Hatherley Street. um, they conceal their intention for HMO. So they apply for homes, 6 bedrooms in each house, but then eventually, within 8 months, they start to apply for HMOs. So there is concerns regarding the car park and question if they only created 11 parking spaces, having HMOs in the future and converting all of them into HMOs, that certainly will bring a lot of tension to the area and will increase in the hate crimes for us. So family homes turned into HMOs. There is a negative reputational impact. Currently, there is a petition of 1,500 signatures, which shows the anger in our community and reputational impact on Liverpool City Council as a loss of public trust and confidence, as demonstrated today this morning. Abandoned site across the city can pose risk to the community. Juice Street was arsoned, and such sites are vulnerable to antisocial behaviour, which risk the mosque and the properties next to them. So we also own properties in Hatherley Street, as well as the masjid. So the impact on us, on our properties, as well as the mosque, damage the community relationship. The proposed properties will flood the area and surrounding streets with numerous issues that, as community leaders, we will struggle to contain them. The area is already congested and will not cope with such residential development. The area needs more green spaces and recreational spaces. I and my community, we consider this is wrong, and we ask you all to correct it, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now invite Fahad Hamed to address the committee?
Thank you, Chair. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes? Sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Fahad Ahmed. I'm a trustee of the Liverpool Region Mosque Network and the Abdullah Quilliam Society. I'd like to make 3 points, please, relating to the planning history of the site in the context of the importance of Al Rahma Mosque to the Muslim community of Liverpool City region, which numbers approximately 40,000 people. Firstly, Liverpool has England's oldest and most diverse Muslim community of over 60 nationalities. Al Rahma Mosque has the largest congregation and is the most widely known mosque, attracting worshippers regularly from surrounding boroughs and across the northwest. Due to the central role that mosques play in Muslim worship and public life, Al Rahma Mosque is used heavily 5 times a day, and during times of religious festivals such as Ramadan is used 24 hours a day. The closest comparison in terms of size and scale of use would be Liverpool's 2 cathedrals. Secondly, Al Rahma Mosque has self-financed and invested millions of pounds in a landmark building as a distinctive design statement for the city. It's landlocked on all sides except on Rosebery Street. Looking to the future, the city has accepted thousands of Syrian and Afghan refugees from the Muslim community, and we're seeing the Muslim demographic growing. Thirdly, as you'll hear in due course, the Muslim community, including the mosques of the city represented by the Liverpool Region Mosque Network, object to this development. To proceed with this development is tantamount to approving a development next to the Anglican Cathedral, which was out of keeping with the area, in defiance of relevant material planning matters and against the express concerns of the diocese about the significant disruption to that community. I do not believe that will be allowed to happen to the Anglican Cathedral, and I plead that this case with this development on Rosebery Street is treated in the same way. Would the chair allow me to share my screen? I have some pictures of Rosebery Street. Is that okay?
If you'd be quick,
yeah.
To the end of your 3 minutes.
I'll do my best. Can you see that? Some pictures?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah. So you can see pictures here. This is Rosebery Street. People praying on the pavement. You can see it's kind of cars on both sides. Here you can see, the scale of people. It would be next to impassable for residents there. And again, you can see actually car parking has caused even damage to local properties. So it's a potential maelstrom of issues coming together here, which again, I'm asking for the committee to please use clemency and prevent this development from happening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I now invite Mr. Abdullah to address the committee?
Hi, my name is Dr. Badar Abdullah. I'm the chairman of Liverpool Muslim Society, Ar-Rahma Mosque. By the way, before I start, the pictures shown by the applicant were from Ducie Street, not Rosebery Street. Ar-Rahma Mosque is run by Liverpool Muslim Society, serving, as my colleague said, 40,000 people from 65 different nationalities. Ar-Rahma Mosque has enormous cultural significance as the largest mosque in the Northwest and the second purpose-built mosque in the UK. Ar-Rahma Mosque is not just a place of worship, it is a place where Muslims conduct their matrimonial services, resolve their domestic issues and take their dead burial service there as well. To give you an idea of what the mosque stands for the Muslims, here are some examples. The mosque receives 4,000 people every Friday. The mosque receives around 200 people every Friday, 5 times a day. That is 1,000 people a day. The mosque receives 200 madrasa children every weekend. The mosque receives school visits from Liverpool every Monday, Tuesday and Thursday during term times. The mosque receives around 12,000 people during Eid days. The mosque receives around over 2,000 people every day during Ramadan for a whole month. 65 nationalities represent the mosque. On behalf of all the Muslims in Liverpool, we strongly object to this proposal for many reasons, as highlighted in our letter to the Planning Committee, and these are some of the examples. This proposed development has the hallmark of HMO properties, 6-bedroom properties right next to the mosque. Theoretically, this new proposed development could house 64 people. Again, theoretically, it could have 65 cars on the street. We strongly reject these massive properties built next to the mosque. This new building will have a huge negative impact on the mosque's historic and architectural value. It is out of character and does not fit with the surrounding structures. There will be a chaos in traffic, and it will create unrest and unease in the area, especially on Fridays. It will strip worshippers of privacy, as prayers will be completely visible and overlooked by the new houses and their residents. This will have a negative impact on quality, equality, diversity, safety for the faith communities in the face of rising hate crime. This proposed development, if approved, will create massive divisions between communities and between the Muslim community and the local authority. It will have a lasting detrimental impact that will only engrave tensions and cause upheavals. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I now call on Fathal Musa to address the committee?
Morning. Dear respected panel, I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of Rosebery Street against this planning application for the following reasons. Loss of green space. We used to have a green space area for the children and elderly in Rosebery Street. The children used to play there under the supervision of their parents and were protected from going to other areas or parks with a strong possibility of them joining gangs and antisocial groups. Also, the elders had something where they would meet and have coffee and socialise, as some of them were unable to walk to the park due to the distance. This was taken away from us since 2018. As a result, they have suffered mentally and physically. Second point, design and appearance. The design and massing is not in keeping with the local area. This is an overdevelopment over the site. The development looks ugly, overbearing, out of scale, out of character in terms of its appearance, compared with existing housing on the opposite side of the street. The mosque building is of a special architectural and historic interest. It will affect the development of the mosque landscape, which is adjacent to the site. Also, congestions with the mosque and increased number of people praying in the streets and parking their cars almost daily. I can't imagine we need more people moving in and living in the streets where they will park their cars, as there is no off-street parking in this proposal. The highway department is out of touch with the local community, as they have not taken into account the 5 daily prayers, Fridays, Ramadan, the month of fasting, including nighttime prayers, community events, weddings, and funerals held both in the mosque and in the PAL Centre. There is insufficient parking for those who attend the mosque and the PAL Centre, which have direct impact on local residents. This will only increase the problem. Social impact, potential antisocial behaviour due to the lack of trust with the developer for obvious reasons, with their history since they started operating in the area. We do not know who will be moving in, the type of accommodation. This will result in social disharmony and increase of crime, something which us and the local authorities wouldn't want to see in the future. I'd rather see that land given to the community than seeing people praying in the streets in all weathers and in front of our homes. Prior to 2018, that land was used for the overspill from the mosque congregation. I'd rather see that land given to the community and see children and elders under the supervision of their loved ones and use it for their well-being. We are adamant that the City Council, Liverpool, have a duty of care to act in the best interest of the community and not in the best interest of a private developer who astonishingly started work on the site without planning permission, especially in light of the Max Caller report. I'd like the panel to have the interest of the local community first, as opposed to the private developments that has a detrimental impact on our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now invite Sahib Al-Rawi to address the committee?
Ladies and gentlemen, respected committee, good morning to you all, and thank you for giving me this opportunity today. My name is Sohaib Arawi. I'm representing Al-Taysir Center of Lodge Lane. From my experience in our center, I believe the capacity of our center representing a size of less than a quarter of the LMS capacity, Al-Rahman Mosque. The biggest challenge for us is that we keep facing a real problem with the neighbors in terms of the parking bays. Rosebery Street is a small road next to a densely populated area. Traffic issues already exist with a lack of space for residents. Can we imagine how big the problem will be with the congregation on Friday prayer for more than 4,000 worshippers in one go? How many complaints and conflict will be expected during the holy month of Ramadan with more than 2,000 worshippers daily? And let's not forget the Eid congregation, as well as more than 12,000 worshippers, as my colleagues have mentioned before. Future traffic issues will result in receiving complaints from neighbors and damaging community cohesion, which will get the LCC extra headache, as this has been the case with our mosque in Al-Taysir that is located in a residential area in Lodge Lane. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now invite Toria Bouadi to address the committee? No? Am I pronouncing that right?
Toria Boyadi.
Can I invite Ashad Haru? I think that's by virtual, it says on my note. Are you there? It doesn't look like we've got that particular objective. Can I invite Mr. Safraz Ali to address the committee? Oh, so sorry that he's ill. Can I then invite Mr. Ahmed Munir, who's the Vice President of the Multicultural Society? Is he present today? No? Can I invite Humayun Mirza? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Good morning, Chair. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. My name is Humayun Mirza. I'm the General Secretary, Pakistan Association, Liverpool, and we administer the Pal Multicultural Centre. Just want to say just a few words in regards the Al Rahma Mosque. The Al Rahma Mosque has been a centre point for all the Muslim community and the local community since the 70s. It is a meeting point where Muslims come together and they not only pray, but it's a place where they come together and meet and discuss various things that happened in the community. Liverpool 8, you know that there is a lot of gun crime, and the Al Rahma Mosque actually helps with the youth who also entice into crime. They are vulnerable young children who are easily invited to join gangs. Recently, there's a report coming out that young children as young as 7 are now involved in taking drugs from one part of the country to another. The
Mr. Mercer, could you confine your remarks to the application in relation to what's being proposed?
I'm just saying, just want to go on. I think the Al Rahma Mosque is a fantastic place. As said to me by the Commissioner of Police, she said that what we need to do is being in the hub of the Liverpool 8 community, we should bring the youngsters in to the Al Rahma Mosque and into the Pal Centre. I think it's a fantastic place, and we should be allowed to have our children use these facilities. I thank you very much, but one more thing I'd like to add is the car park. I have been a building and land surveyor for the Liverpool City Council. I was medically retired, but the thing is that the parking facilities for the size of houses, I think an average of 2 cars per household, there isn't enough space. And also it is a hazard and will be a hazard for the type of houses that are built in the future, and accidents will happen. I thank you for your time, and thank you. Cheers.
Okay, thank you. Could I now invite Alam Nawaz to address the committee, please?
Good morning, Chair and Councillors. My name is Alam Nawaz. I'm a trustee at the Pal Centre in Liverpool. I'm speaking on behalf of the Centre because the Pal Multicultural Centre and the Al Rahma Mosque have been working in partnership since long to reduce the crime rates and the antisocial behaviour in the area. We are providing them with activities to keep the youth off the streets, and there's been clear discomfort noted within the community and our service users. The community is utterly disappointed by the decision to hand over the land to developers when the Al Rahma Mosque really should have been given priority to access that land in order to expand our services and involve the youth, that's the 13 to 19-year-olds, that we both organisations currently are unable to do due to the shortage of space. The Al Rahma Mosque and the PAL Centre, both organisations, had planned to work jointly on this age group had this land been given to the Al Rahma Mosque by using our gym facilities and our industrial kitchen equipment jointly with the trained mentors from the Al Rahma Mosque. We are on the front end of dealing with the community and fear that giving a go-ahead to the developers will have a harsh impact on our local community. We will be unable to control if there's actually any backlash that we are currently predicting by listening to the community, specifically with the youth concerns. And I'd just like to say we are already working closely to minimise the crime rate, and letting go of this land will jeopardise our standing in the community. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Can I now invite Sahid Adam to address the committee?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be addressing you today. My name is Said Adam. I'm a local resident living off Rosebery Street. I'm here to object to the planning application to build housing in Rosebery Street on the grounds of environmental effects it will have on the residents and community. Housing, by practical definition, is an environmental issue, yet environmental policy really addresses housing or the impact of land usage. Despite it having significant impact it has on quality of life, we don't factor in health and well-being. The loss of vital green space in an area which has none will significantly impact quality of life, leading to the health concerns and the short life expectancy of the residents. Preserving and enhancing open green space should be at the heart of all developments as part of promoting public health. COVID and lockdown has proved how important it is to have green spaces. Many residents lack access to gardens and need outside green spaces. Liverpool City Council says it recognises the importance of sustainability, growth and development of the community in a balanced way, but the proposed development fails to properly address the environment, the density, quality of life and the already severe lack of parking that exists within this land. On the 5th of October, I attended an event called Liverpool The New Chapter, which was a presentation by the Mayor, Joanne Anderson, and the Director of Regeneration, Mark Boatfield, when they emphasised how the environment would be central to all current and future developments, saying that their recent visit to Copenhagen had inspired them to create a community-oriented developments. The Climate Summit, COP26, is starting in a week's time in Glasgow. The eyes of the world will be upon us. What legacy do we leave to our kids, elderly, and the future generations if we don't give them this space to breathe, to roam and play? Actions speak louder than words, Chair. The previous actions or developments from West Street tell us these developments are unfeasible, unworkable, and it's not practical to the local environment, depriving us of green spacing, quality of living, and going against everything the Mayor said 2 weeks ago about the environment being central to all developments within the city. We don't need to condemn our future or the future of our kids or the next generation by taking away much needed green land, and that can be used for sustainable green, cleaner neighbourhood. And why not let's pause today and think about better alternative? As Copenhagen, as the Mayor said, Copenhagen has shown us a better way of using our land to create a green space. We've seen what COVID can do. People want to go outside. People want to use that space. Today, I've heard the footprint architects and their sort of presentation, which was
Mr. Adam, could you bring your comments to a close, please?
Yeah. Finally, I would just say
today what I've heard so far from architects have been very unconvincing. And I hope that's taken into account. But thank you so much and have a good day.
Okay, thank you. Could I now invite Ed Gammon to address the committee?
Morning, Chair. Morning, committee. I'm a L8 resident, and I've been involved in sort of planning issues and regeneration issues for the last decade. I've only come to 3 planning committees. This is my 3rd planning committee. The other 2 were about Juicy Street. So I just want to focus quickly on things that people have mentioned here already to do with the lack of trust and reputational damage that this development runs the risk of doing to Liverpool City Council. When I was opposing Juicy Street, it was the same developers, it was Westtree who were trying to develop that, but that was in the days before the Calla report, before the arrest of Nick Kavanagh, before the arrest of the mayor, and many of the people on this committee were there then, and they're still here now. So I just
Mr. Gammon, can you confine your comments to the application?
I'm coming to that. So part of the issue, as we know, is the land that has been given to Westtree all over Granby. There's a lot of concern about how that happened and the legality or lawfulness of that disposal of land. So I kind of feel like unless that is cleared up and people are confident that that process was legitimate and fair, you risk an enormous amount of damage, especially given the fact that we know things now that we didn't know previously with Juicy Street in 2019. So that's really my main point, is that I don't think, given what we know now, given what we know about the disposal of land, I feel like it's really difficult for this committee to try to push this forward, given that situation. Thank you very much.
Chair, just for the benefit of members of the committee and public presence of viewing proceedings online, the planning committee can only deal with material considerations of a planning nature and also deal with matters and applications placed before it. Matters relating to transfers of land, sales or disposals by the council, third parties or otherwise are not within the purview of the planning process. They are excluded from consideration, and I would remind any further objectors to not reference this issue for the simple reason this cannot be taken into consideration by this committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Can I invite now Isabel O'Rourke to address the committee?
Hi. Okay, so you've got the incredibly poor quality architecture, the potential for terms and conditions meant to protect HMOs being easily overturned. You've got the loss of amenity to the wider community as well as the immediate estate. In the city plan, the council intends to promote diverse, inclusive community cohesion. In the future, the Caribbean Centre, Pakistan Centre and this land are going to be needed for the community carnival that has been lost. That is such a powerful way to prevent youth crime. There are all the religious events. The proposal contravenes every single one of the neighbourhood, culture, environment and health objectives outlined in the city plan from 2020. This might have passed under the old regime, but I do not think you can nod it through. The potential for a renewal of real good quality community life in L8, which has seen virtually all of its venues and clubs shut down, is immense. As a tourist attraction, a community carnival which links Lodge Lane, Granby and Dingle could grow to be as big as Africa. Oh yay. This is one of the oldest diverse cities, and it is the only one that now lacks community carnival. I think if you believe in the words of the City Council's objectives, you cannot give permission, and that Westtree need to return the land which has been dumped on, fenced off and unused for the last few years. Westtree have to return it to the condition it was in before, and if you cannot reject building at all, you need decent, good quality family housing with off-road car parking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Could I now call on Sabah Ahmed to address the committee?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sabah Ahmed, and I'm a community development worker for Liverpool 8. I have huge concerns about such a development being granted on the little green space left in and around homes in this area. The impact that such a huge development will have on the health and well-being of local residents is startling. These 11 properties are 4 stories high in comparison to the 2-story homes opposite and around. Their height even overpowers and overshadows the mosque and its golden dome. These towering townhouses completely overshadow the neighbouring properties and cause a huge loss of light. The right to light is a fundamental one when it comes to health. To block and reduce potential sunlight in this way cannot be permitted. This area known as Toxteth is one of the hardest hit in terms of health and mental health outcomes. My community is in the most at-risk category, largely black and ethnic minority residents. Obstructing sunlight from local residents further lowers opportunities for natural vitamin D and its absorption in a ward that is known for high vitamin D deficiency rates, causing huge immune system issues that have already put our diverse community at risk with COVID, more so than anybody else. It's a ward that has suffered brutally during the pandemic and lost many to COVID. The impacts of poor health has cost this community dearly, and making decisions and dramatic environmental changes such as this unfairly puts residents' health at risk further, and it's just criminal. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now invite Abdul Waze to address the committee?
Hello and good morning. My name is Abdul Wais. I am a resident of the L8 and a youth ambassador for LTC Mosque of Rosebery. My main concerns here today are worries if planning permission on Rosebery Street is granted, it will cause extra problems. It will cause extra problems to an area which has already huge tensions. I've experienced this in my mosque on Lodge Lane. We are a tiny mosque in a residential area and have daily complaints with neighbours, which takes a lot of energy and work to try and resolve before escalating. Now you can imagine such a mosque, such as Al Rahman Mosque, the problems will double, triple and also multiply. Last week was Hate Crime Awareness the week, and the levels of hate crime in the city has risen, including Islamophobic crime. Building 11 houses of the size would cause extra conflict between neighbours and worshippers, as it already is difficult to manage, and such a development will only increase this harmony. Furthermore, the privacy of the worshippers would be exposed, meaning after Friday prayers during Ramadan and Eid prayers, the socializations between each worshipper outside these houses, if were to be made, would cause less cohesion between the communities we are in right now. Furthermore, there is a community yard behind Ar-Rahma Mosque on Rosebery Street where the youth enjoy their activities, where the youth play basketball, and you can imagine if houses are there, if houses are built, it will cause a lot of conflict between the neighbours and between the youth. We hear a lot about youth wanting to go up. Well, how can this happen if this planning is admitted? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I now invite Tom Clements to address the committee?
Hello. Good morning. My name is Tom Clements. I'm a local L8 resident with a background in planning and regeneration, speaking on behalf of myself and all concerned residents and community groups. I'd like to draw attention to the planning history of the site and the context of associated social issues. Lest we forget, the neighbourhood in which this development sits has been subject to several unpopular regeneration schemes over the years. Poor quality housing projects, destruction of community shops and spaces, and a complete lack of consideration towards urban design, placemaking, and spatial planning. When residents have complained they've been ignored or shut down by the council, we should really be past this now. And yet, the developer Westtree, whose land grab schemes are littered all over the Granby neighbourhood, have shown no interest or concern in preserving or meaningfully consulting the community in question. Instead, they have sought to make a quick fortune at the expense of these people, facilitated in doing so by a chronic lack of awareness, oversight and scrutiny by the council. And that's without getting into the design of the thing, which is atrocious. 4 stories high, dwarfing surrounding houses, inevitably leading to a loss of light and a visual eyesore by being completely out of keeping with the scale and architecture of the surrounding built-up area. The whole point of planning is the ability to contextualise a proposal into its wider environment. I see no evidence of this here, and this proposal should be rejected on these grounds. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, can I invite Councillor Lucille Harvey to address the committee?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak today as a councillor and local resident. I'm opposing this application on 3 grounds. Firstly, the loss of amenities and privacy. As has been discussed at length, the site backs directly onto Al Rahma Mosque, which is a focal point for the Muslim community across the northwest of England. Al Rahma attracts many thousands of worshippers and large congregations which fill all 3 floors of the mosque, their outside area, onto the pavement and onto the actual road of Rosebery Street. This development would severely impinge on the privacy of worshippers at Friday prayers, a sacred and holy time for the Muslim community. At the last planning meeting, and when this application came before, I requested an impact equality assessment. Was this carried out, and if so, can the results be shared? The second ground I'm opposing on is traffic. As already explained, this area gets incredibly busy and is already struggling to accommodate the existing amounts of traffic. The current situation is dangerous and unsustainable. Adding 11 6-bedroom properties and the extra cars and traffic they will generate will just worsen the already dangerous traffic conditions. Rather than adding more cars, there is a strong case to pedestrianise these streets on safety grounds. As I requested a traffic flow report to be carried out at peak traffic times on a Friday afternoon. Was this carried out, and can the results be shared, please? The third ground I'm opposing on is a planning history. As has been discussed, the previous mayor had promised this land to Al Rahma Mosque, who spent thousands carrying out surveys and consultations on how they could use the land best community use. This agreement was then gone, and the mayor went back on it, and the land was given to Westtree for development. This has led to bad will between the developer and the community, which has only been exacerbated by the developer's behaviour. For example, the lack of respect shown by Westtree towards Liverpool City Council, the community and the law by starting to build before gaining permission. Finally, I would like to register my dissatisfaction at the timing of the site visit. By having the visit after 9 AM on a weekday when most people have already left work, taking their cars with them, does not give an accurate picture of the amount of traffic in the area. After the last planning committee, this application came before, I requested in writing that a site visit take place on Friday afternoon so committee members could see how busy Al Rahma Mosque is during Friday prayers, the amount of worshippers and the traffic this generates every week. By not having a site visit on a Friday afternoon, committee members do not have the that's available on this application. I would request another site visit takes place on a Friday afternoon as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, that concludes all the speakers of this application. We've got somebody got their hand up, but we're not taking any more speakers, sorry. We've had a list and we've gone through the list. I think that point's already been made, to be honest, and I think members will appreciate it this morning, going out, actually seeing for themselves that particular location. I think we're well aware that, you know, Friday prayers take place and there will be substantially more vehicles and more people attending the mosque, and I think that will be taken into account when we make our decision. So I'm going to ask the team leader for the South to go through this application and summarise some of the concerns that have been raised, and also clarify the position on affordable houses, if you would, please, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. Stuart Clark, team leader of the South team. Just before I start, I'd like to report one further representation which has been submitted on behalf of the mosque, which refers to no consultations being undertaken in 2018, and that the application before you should be for a retrospective development, given that works have already started. Members have had a full presentation from the applicant, and there's a full planning report before you that deals with the vast majority of all the planning objections that you've heard today. Members have also undertaken a full site visit, which has allowed them to understand the context of the site and get a grasp of the impacts of what's being proposed. The application is a finely balanced one and has been previously considered by Planning Committee, but is required to be referred back as works have commenced prior to the consent being issued, and a number of details required under pre-commencement conditions needed to be addressed, given that they could no longer be complied with as a result of work starting on site, which were subsequently halted by the intervention of the enforcement team. Whilst a concern has been raised that the application should be a specific application to retain the works, the Head of Legal Services has advised that the application is capable of being considered in the manner it has been submitted in, given that members are fully aware that the works to be retained have been identified as being the slab, and that this has been seen as part of the site visit where all members could see that through the fence when we were there. The application cited a vacant piece of previously developed land that formerly had houses on it and which has subsequently been grassed over. The site is allocated to primarily residential in the unitary development plan and local plan, and therefore the principle of residential in this location is considered to be acceptable subject to matters of design, amenity and highways. As you've seen, the proposal is for a modern four-storey townhouses with a contrasting upper floor that will have a slight pitch that seeks to pick up on the scale of the mosque. Whilst no objections were received in 2018 in connection with the first round of consultations, a number of objections have been submitted following the reconsultations this time round, which also included, as in the 2018, site notices and press notices. They were therefore satisfied that the local community had ample opportunity to make representation on the application before you. The local area is characterised by a tight urban grain where interface distances are tighter than that would be found in new build suburban estates. And therefore, whilst those interfaces are substandard, they are considered on balance to be acceptable given that tight urban grain. As such, your officers are satisfied that the impacts on amenity as a result of the proposal could be considered to be acceptable in this particular instance. However, as mentioned before, this is a finely balanced judgment. The proposals have appropriately sized rooms so as to comply with nationally prescribed space standards and are fully accessible in terms of being compliant with Part M42 and 10% Part M43 of the building regulations. The dwellings will provide a strong urban frontage that will re-knit the historic street and picks up on the Victorian architectural style that dominates the Granby area, providing a modern twist that will positively contribute to the area. The material palette will consist of buff bricks with an anthracite coloured roof. As you've heard, the scheme will provide 11 parking bays outside of the dwellings, and the Head of Highways and Transportation is satisfied that this will provide sufficient parking to service the new dwellings and prevent existing driveways being obstructed, albeit that these parking bays will be available to all persons and will not be dedicated. All former pre-commencement details relating to contamination, off-site highway works and drainage have now been agreed, and are considered to be acceptable by the relevant specialist teams. Concerns have been raised that the premises will be used as HIMOs. However, this is not part of the application, and a condition removing permitted development rights to go from C3 to C4 is also proposed. In terms of loss of green space, the site prior to the works commencing had very little recreational value with no formal facilities. It had no discernible ecological value. There are no links to other green spaces, and in visual amenity terms was considered to be very limited, constituting a simple mown grassed area with the appearance of a gapped site in the wider urban grain. It is considered, therefore, that the proposal will assist in the ongoing regeneration of the Granby area, and your officers are therefore happy to recommend the application for approval, Chair, but we're happy to answer any questions.
Could you just explain in relation to the affordable houses as well?
If I could refer directly to the Chair's note that members have got before them, and particularly the second paragraph of that. So I'll sort of read it verbatim. It says, it's recognised that some proposals which are significantly advanced with the local planning authority, it may be difficult to fully adhere to the full policy requirements of affordable housing. The local planning authority must also remain mindful that the policy does not yet hold full weight. In this case, the application has been passing through the planning system for an extended period of time, having been first considered in 2018. On balance, therefore, it's accepted that the proposal does not meet the requirements of policy H3 in the emerging local plan, and the local authority is currently working towards being able to direct applicants to secure a mechanism for delivery of full affordable housing requirement moving forwards. So that's the position where we sit with affordable housing, Chair.
Thanks, Stuart. Do members have any questions? First, Councillor Hanson, then Councillor Maloney.
Thanks, Stuart. I'd probably first like to start off by one, thanking the person who asked to do a site visit. I think that certainly opened my eyes, and perhaps it's something that we need to look at in the future a bit more carefully. Can you speak up, please? Sorry, my apologies. I'd like to start off by first thanking the committee for arranging the site visit. It certainly opened my eyes, and perhaps we need to be more mindful of further site visits as we go through the planning process. And also, I'd like to thank the residents who were on site this morning for the way we were treated as a committee. It's not often we get silence from the residents, but it was I know it was most appreciated by all the planning committee. So thank you for the respect that you gave us this morning. In terms of in some of the comments, Stuart, there's comment made in relation to the viability of the company. I know we do due diligence and that kind of stuff, but I don't know the company. Obviously, the residents do, but they've raised concerns about their ability to deliver. So I'd like to hear something in relation to what due diligence we've carried out on this company and their ability to deliver. I really got great concerns in relation to a company that starts building on land that they don't own, and we as a council have to stop them doing that before they've actually got planning permission. So, you know, for me, that's a question about the company itself and the people within that company that conduct themselves in such a cavalier manner. I don't know, and I want some advice and guidance. How much weight do we carry, or does this committee carry, when 40,000, when speakers today are speaking on behalf of 40,000 Muslims within the city and the wider area? Does it carry any weight, or we just ignore it? My view is we should not ignore that kind. But again, I'd ask the question. The terms of the size, and I think one of the speakers this morning said, would we allow something like this outside the cathedral? Are the cathedrals within the city? I think that there's some validity to that. You know, it is an incredibly important building in the city, the mosque. Absolutely incredibly important. And as officers, we give them a recommendation to say that size and height of that building, the impact that it would have on the mosque. You know, where's the weight carried in that? I'm concerned also about the poor design. I think it's oversized. It's massive. It not only impacts upon the mosque, but it impacts upon the surrounding houses. On far end there's an old 3-story outside. I don't know what I think it's a community centre. I'm unsure. But so even the apartments are bigger than that, and so it's not in keeping. A comment was made in relation to placemaking. Again, what did we do within the process about placemaking? Because it certainly for me seems out of step with the I mean the UD1 asks for a local character and distinctiveness. Well, that area is distinctive. It's got the mosque, it's got the houses. It's a distinctive area in keeping with other places within that area, and yet we're looking at doing allowing, or the recommendation is to allow that kind of that building to take place. Again, I think I don't know against you how much weight we put into the concerns raised by the community and the issues that we already know exist within that community, and the growing concerns that exist with, there are major concerns, and they're growing major concerns as well. So I don't know again how much weight we carried it with that. I've got simplistic views and overdevelopment side. I don't know why we as a city council are dealing with a developer of this nature who will just go onto a site that he doesn't know and start building. And again, best value says that that piece of land will have to go out onto the public market. That's my understanding. That's what the statutory officer is saying. That's what the commissioner is saying.
No, Councillor Hanson, it's been explained again, by the committee clerk that we can't take that into account.
No, I'm making the point that that piece of land will have to go out to market value, and that we're raising the value. If we give that planning permission, that will raise the value of that land, but it has to go out to the market. It can't be just given to those people at whatever cost. It has to go to the open market, because that's what I'm being told by statutory officers, and that's what I'm being told by the commissioners. So that has value, and it should be considered.
Well, I mean, obviously, we'll bring the officer in and he can answer some of the points that you've raised, but in relation to the ownership of land, it's not a material consideration for this committee. We need to make sure that you understand that. Also, in relation to whether it gets built anywhere in the city, we treat every application on its own merits separately, and we also take into account concerns and objections that we have, and that's why we undertook the site visit this morning, to understand and hear what people have got to say, and I think it was beneficial for all the members of the committee. So, Stuart, if you'd like to come in and comment on some of the points raised by Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and pick up on some of the points raised. In terms of the developer suitability track record, that's not something that we're allowed to take into account. Whatever your views may or may not be about the developer, it's not a relevant planning matter for the purposes of considering or making a decision on the application. In relation to works commencing on site, as I advised in my summing up, as soon as we were made aware of it, the enforcement team came in and advised them to stop, and to the best of my knowledge, once that instruction was issued, no further works have taken part on the site. So my understanding is we acted as quickly as we could in that respect. In terms of the weight that you can attach to certain planning matters, that's very much a matter for the planning committee as to what weight they consider is more appropriate. In terms of the impact on the mosque isn't listed. It's not a conservation area, so it's a slightly different scenario in terms of impact on the character of that building, to the analogy given with the cathedral. Notwithstanding that, it's completely open to members to take a view that the building that's being proposed, if they're of the view that it's too large in terms of how it sits with that building, that's a perfectly valid planning view to take, and that's a matter for committee. Similarly with scale and design, as the architect said, and I sort of summed up, they've sought to impose a modern twist on the architecture that exists in the area. Architecture and design are somewhat subjective. So it's, again, this is the view that's been in front of you in the report, is the view of your officers. It's entirely up to the committee to disagree with that view if they so choose to. because design is, again, degree of subjectivity. So if you feel the scale is too big, that's a conclusion you're entitled to come to. And in terms of the impact on the wider community, I'm not totally sure what you mean by that. If it means on the impact of the ability of the mosque and, to operate, I don't think residential, in principle, would impact on the ability of the mosque to operate, or would introduce a use that would lead to antisocial behaviour. But again, that's a matter for members to form a different view should they so choose to. And I think the chair picked up on that we're not really allowed to comment on matters of land deals outside of.
Thanks, Stuart. Can I now ask Councillor Maloney?
Thanks, Chair. I completely agree with Councillor Hanson's comments, so I won't repeat them, but I will go on to some other issues. I do have very strong concerns about the mass scale and design of this proposal. I think if we consider that there's no off-street car parking with this proposal, yet if we look at the other side of Rosebery Street, they all have driveways, so those residents presumably do not use up any of the on-street car parking, whereas with this proposal, because it comes to the actual front of the pavement rather than the big gardens that the houses opposite have, I think it's very different to the surrounding architecture in that street. So I'm not convinced that it is appropriate. I do share the concerns about due diligence, but I appreciate that that is not part of the planning process. I would say that the design itself is not sympathetic with the design of the mosque. And although the mosque is not listed, it is a very important building for the community. And I think that lack of sympathy with the mosque is very worrying. And the comments were made by many of the objectors about the cohesion of the community. And I think, therefore, that also is a very important point. So thank you, Chair.
I'm not sure that there was any questions on that, Councillor Mahoney. Anna, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will stick to material planning matters, even though I'm tempted to talk about everything else as raised by the members of the community. So first of all, thank you very much to the members of the community for showing us the respect. And I found the site visit incredibly helpful. It made me realize the scale of the proposed development, which in my opinion is definitely and totally too large and not in keeping with the local area whatsoever. About the loss of green space, even though it was said that it was a poor quality green space, any green space is better than none, and especially like some members of the community raised it in times of post-COVID recovery and in times of trying to build links with your community and heal after COVID. So I refute the argument that it's a poor quality green space and therefore it's legitimate to build on it. And thirdly, the impact of traffic on Fridays, Muslim holidays, and lots of other occasions will just be too much. So as such, on those three grounds, I will just not be able to vote in favour of this application. I will oppose it with all my heart.
Councillor Cardwell?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a couple of things. My concern, having visited the site, is about height, density, and the impact. If you look at it, it's sort of the block follows the top of the mosque, as it were, and hits the eaves of the the block on the other side, which is the kind of the back of the shops on Granby. So it seems to it really dominates and is totally out of character. And I appreciate what you're saying that the mosque isn't listed, but that doesn't mean it isn't listed in the way that people feel about the place. And if my memory serves me correctly, there's actually a site which probably should be a historically important site on Hatherley Street, because what we see now as the Al-Rahma Mosque is obviously maybe, I think, the second or third iteration. But the first iteration of it was in Hatherley Street in a seaman's living room, I think many moons ago, a member of the Yemeni community who kind of started it all off. and it just seems so totally out of character. But going back to planning considerations, are there limits or standards that should apply to this in terms of height? Because it's an area I know well, it's an area I grew up in, and there are some 4-storey houses, but they achieve the 4 stories by having 1 story below ground. This just seems way too high in terms of the height.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of, as I've said before, in terms of scale and design, clearly that's a matter for members to consider. It's entirely up to them if they consider it to be too big. In the report, we do fully acknowledge that the interface distances are substandard, but it's in a part of the city where there's a tighter urban grain. So the application of our normal standards, you normally relax. Similarly, in the city centre, you wouldn't expect 23, 25 metres between buildings. So in tighter urban grain areas, those figures or those distances are characteristically smaller. But if you know, it's entirely again up to yourselves as members of the committee. If you believe that those interfaces, by virtue of the scale and the height, are too tight, then it's a perfectly reasonable conclusion to come to, if that's how members wish to progress.
Yeah, it's on there. It's on there. Thanks, Chair. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Hanson that I am very grateful to have made the site visit today, and I do believe that is something we should use more in the future, because I think it really displayed how incongruous this development is with its surroundings. It's clearly oversized. It dwarfs all the buildings around it, and certainly the buildings opposite. I think its proximity to the mosque is disrespectful to the mosque, and I'm just curious that there are no buildings of any similar scale around about it, and I'm just wondering how we got that approval.
Councillor Prince.
Oh, there we are. Hi, thanks. Difficult going last, because basically I agree with everything that almost last. Okay, thanks a lot. I think the site visit was really important to us this morning, in that we saw that this building, which on paper always looked too big for me anyway, is totally out of keeping with the whole local scene. It's much bigger than the houses facing, it's much bigger than the houses behind. And the idea of setting the height in particular to be the level of the mosque, that just doesn't fit at all. I mean, surely the point of the mosque is it's the focal point for the community, and therefore should be, in this case, bigger. You know, to have it so closely massed together, but also in particular so high, to me that's totally inappropriate. When you add the things like the car parking, you know, if you've only got 20% of the houses to an affordable level, that means 80% of the people are going to be buying a house of a higher cost, and they're more likely to have more than one car, which links in with all the problems that people were talking about, the activity on Friday and Ramadan and other times throughout the year. So for all those reasons, I also think this is totally inappropriate, but particularly the size and height.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. I am here. I've got just something to say and then a question, well, a couple of questions really. I just want to thank, like my councillor colleagues, the residents of and the people from the mosque for the respect and dignity they showed us this morning. Yes, it was a very useful visit. I've got a couple of questions really. The applicant has confirmed that these proposed townhouses will be for the rental market, so they're not to be, you know, as far as the applicant's concerned, and for larger families. The one thing I didn't see was any garden space or outdoor space. You know, if you take into consideration 4 stories 6 bedrooms houses, how many people are going to be occupying each of those houses? And if there are children, where's their outdoor space? Regardless of, you know, anybody in Hatherley Street losing green space as it is now. I think the whole thing is overdevelopment, but I'd like to ask the question, please, Stuart. Is there any outdoor space for those people?
And the properties have yards at the back, which are similar to, again, I talked before about urban grain and urban character. This part of the city, it's tight urban grain, is characterised by yards as opposed to, well, not totally yards, but there's a lot of the terrace properties have yards instead of formal large gardens. So it's in keeping with that, but I accept, yeah, there's no actual significant garden areas associated with the premises. It's a yard where, you know, again, similar that you'd expect with the terrace properties.
Sorry, can you just wait till I finish, please? Thank you. I too, like Councillor Carswell, grew up in that area, and the houses that either side on the side that, you know, is 4-storey, and as Councillor Carswell said, that, you know, it's got a cellar, a basement. I'm more concerned about the houses at the back of them, that are only, you know, 2 stories high, and have got, you know, appropriate yard space for a 2-storey house, traditionally. But are there windows at the back of those buildings as well that would overlook those houses at the back?
Again, I'll go back to, yes, the interface distances are substandard. We fully accept that, and we're upfront about that in the report. But again, it's not unusual to have tight urban knit communities or urban knit fabric where you've got habitable rooms that are much more reduced than you would if you were building new build on a greenfield site.
Oh, well, I thought we moved on from there, Stuart, got to be honest with you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. No, we're not going to take any more sorry, no, we're not taking any more speakers, sorry. We're going to move to a recommendation now. Can you please, will you allow us to continue, please? Can we stop? Please stop this across the chamber. We're going to move to a recommendation now. I mean, I've listened very, very carefully to all the objections and the applicants and to members of the committee, and I really think that the site visit this morning was really useful. In my original recommendation, it was going to be that we approved the recommendation. However, going on site and seeing that for myself and the scale and the massing and design that's being proposed, I'm minded that we refuse this application by virtue of its scale and massing and design, which would cause overshadowing, in my opinion, and affect the residential amenity of local residents, loss of light, overdevelopment because of its height and density. So we can put that in a form of words, please, Mike. That would be acceptable, but that is my recommendation, that the application be refused on those grounds.
Thank you, Chair. Before I just summarise and translate the Chair's comments into a formal resolution, just to advise that in the event the committee is minded to vote in favour of the Chair's resolution to refuse, this will result in a further report being made back to this committee to formalise and regularise any potential reasons for refusal, again, should this motion be minded to be accepted by the committee. In terms of the wording, the Chair has sought to move and summarise. Essentially, the proposal will be to refuse the application on the basis that the proposed development, by virtue of its scale and massing, is out of character and incongruous with the design and character of adjacent residential properties, will have a substantial negative impact on the amenity of adjacent residential properties, as inadequate and substandard interface distances, such as to have a harmful and negative ongoing impact on residential amenity, and similarly by virtue of its height is also incongruous alongside its appearance. I will paraphrase that wording precisely for purposes of the minutes and the resolution of this meeting, but I believe that summarises, Chair, your comments. So with that in mind, the Chair's motion does not require a seconder. Therefore, unless there are further comments from members of this committee only, I'll now take votes in turn. So, Chair, are you happy with that as a reason?
Yes, thanks, Mike.
Thank you. So, Chair, your vote, please.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
4.
Councillor Carwell.
4.
Councillor Hanson.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Marat.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Prince.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Maloney.
4.
Councillor Lake.
4.
Thank you. And lastly, Councillor Key.
4.
Thank you, councillors. That concludes the voting on the Chair's resolution. The voting is unanimous that the recommendation of the Chair to refuse the applications for the reasons which I've already summarised. Therefore, the effect of this will mean that there will be a further report back to committee in the coming weeks to confirm and formalise the reasons for refusal. And again, the committee will have the opportunity to affirm its position at that point. Thank you. Just on behalf of the City Council, thank you to all those who are present in the chamber at this point, and I will suggest, for the benefit of members and those present, that the committee may wish to stand adjourned very briefly, just so we can allow an actual pause in proceedings and to allow members of the public to leave if they may wish. Thank you.
Hay Hospital application for an extension, and I will call on the applicant and the architect to address the committee. So can I call on Jim O'Brien and Joe Kember, please?
Good morning, I'm Joe Kember from Billingdon Architects, and we're the architects and the agents for the trust, for the Alder Hay Children's Trust. So I just wanted to talk through the proposals. The scheme that we're looking at is for a new...
Could I ask you to speak a little more loudly, please? Some of us are struggling to hear you.
No problem. The scheme that we're looking at is for a new neonatal unit and a paediatric assessment unit, and also an emergency decisions unit. The scheme that you're looking at now, on the first floor we've got the neonatal unit, and on the ground floor we've got the extension to ED, which is the using colours and themes that respond to the park. Using the colours that we've got with the natural colours of the render, and also the natural colours of the cladding as well. We've consulted with the clinical teams and also with the parents to arrive at the aesthetic of the building, and we are moving obviously forward today to discuss the proposals. This is another view from the other side. We've soft building and building that it's almost like a transition to the park. So the design solution still has its own identity and sits separate from the main building, but it isn't in conflict with the main building. So in partnership with Liverpool Women's Hospital, the Alder Hay Children's Hospital is going to provide 22 single to the accommodation on the first floor of the existing hospital, and also at the ground floor.
And we haven't got any speakers for or against, so can I invite the team leader to come in and summarise this application, and then ask members if they want any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Fergal McFall, team leader for the city centre. Amy, I don't know if you can bring the If you just go back one, you had it there previously. Anyway, Chair, sorry, if you hold it on that one, thank you very much. Chair, this application was previously considered by yourselves in May of last year, where you resolved to grant planning permission for the conversion of numbers 14 and 20 Stanley Street, which are currently occupied by a number of apartments and also offices and storage uses. You were minded to grant planning permission for the conversion of the building into 49 service apartments within use class 1. I should say this building is grade 2 listed. Only recently the applicants have come to sign the legal agreement. And if members have been aware that during the intervening 18 months or so, the draft local plan has further strengthened in terms of the policies contained within it. And the National Planning Policy Framework has been updated in July this year. So there's been a number of changes to planning policies in the intervening period. So this report is just in front of you to reconsider what changes have been made to policy in the interim period. The application is being reassessed in terms of the principle of development, the historic environment, parking and highway issues, and amenity. And the conclusion of the report is that policies at a national or local level haven't changed within the intervening period for you to change your mind or change your original recommendation. There was a number of objections raised to the original application by your officers in terms of inclusive design and terms of heritage. However, when the application was previously considered by you in May of last year, alterations were made to the scheme to address the concerns of those officers. There's no provision for all street car parking, but there would be cycle, provision for cycle stands within the development, and also there's a condition attached to the recommendation in terms of the management and supervision of the facility. But Chair, there's nothing that warrants you to change your mind from May of last year. The application is supported by your officers, subject to legal agreement.
Do members have any questions or comments? No?
Chair, sorry.
Oh, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you. It was about the inclusive access. I see that there are a couple of recommendations. I'm just wondering, would they be conditions of the application?
Thank you very much. Yes, the building, you can't really see it from that photo. The building is grade 2 listed, and there's this year's 7 steps that lead up to the front of the building from Stanley Street. So the building, it was acknowledged at the time that the building couldn't be fully accessible to wheelchair users. There's a condition attached to the recommendation that 4 of the apartments, which is just slightly less than 10%, would be fully laid out and accessible for ambulant, disabled, i.e. people who have disabilities but are not kind of in a wheelchair. And that is, the plans attached to the recommendation show the specification for those rooms.
Okay, any further comments, questions? Well, I think it's clear. I mean, there's no changes to the external of the building itself, and it doesn't really, any of the policies that are coming in, it doesn't change the position really. So can I move that the recommendation be approved? Is that agreed?
Thank you, Chair. Just for the purposes of recording the vote, I do need to check individual votes for planning committee. So again, Chair, your vote?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Cardwell?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Prince?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Maloney?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Lake? And Councillor Key?
4.
Thank you. That concludes voting on the application. The voting is unanimous of those members present, and we move on to our next item, number 6 on today's agenda.
Thanks, Mike. This is 160 to 162 Breck Road, and we have the architect agent here, but only to answer questions if members have got any questions, and there are no speakers against. Could I ask team leader to take us through this application, and then allow members to ask any questions or comments and questions to the applicant or agent?
Thanks, Chair. Victoria Vaughan Williams, Deputy Team Leader in North. So this application is for an outline application where it's just access and scale that's to be considered today. All other matters are reserved for a later date. So the application is for a 3-storey block comprising of retail on the ground floor and residential on the upper floor. You'll, Amy's put them up. You'll see from the plans in front of you that the building wraparounds a public house and has got frontages on both sides, on Breck Road and Breckfield Road South. In terms of the height, you'll see in paragraph 2.1 of your report that the officer outlines the maximum height of both elements of Breck Road and of Breckfield Road South, which is roughly between 8.5 and 8.7 metres in height, which equates to 3 stories. Within the application, because it's outlined, the applicant has confirmed the maximum number of apartments would be 14. There is a slight error in the report at 2.1.2 where it refers to 16 residents. It's actually 14. And it would provide 100 square metres of retail floor space on the ground floor. In terms of the access would remain the same as the existing. Amy, is there any photos? So we can just show. Yeah, that's fine. the elevations will do. So the access to the retail is as per the original access that's there now. The access to the pedestrian, to the apartments above would be off Breck Road also. In terms of the vehicular access, there will be a new access point on Breckfield Road South, which would lead on to 16 car parking spaces, and that would servicing from the site would be to the rear of the property. And they're just the two matters that you need to consider today. All other matters are reserved. So design, layout and landscaping aren't for discussion or consideration today. And therefore your officer recommends approval subject to a legal agreement and the stated conditions.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? Councillor Bennett?
Sorry about this, Chair.
Agents or to the officer?
To the officer or the agent. I'm not really bothered actually. It's about the road around that actual site. I'm quite familiar with the having lived in that area at some point. They're very quite tight roads, and it's a very, very busy junction. You know, there's a pub next door, and that's a lights there. You know, there's it's a set of lights on all four corners, but the actual roadway to get into the back of those where you're proposing the car park will be is very tight, and it's the same road that they use to go into Home and Bargains, I think. And then the next road's the one that goes into the Asda. Am I quite right? Yeah. It's a really tight road. You can just, I mean, I've seen many of accidents, you know, bumps and scrapes on cars there, and it's also, you know, where pedestrians cross. So I'm just concerned about the actual space on that road for cars going up and down.
Andy, would you like to come in on this one and respond to the comment?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Andy Moore, Highways Development Control Team Leader. It's Breckfield Road South is it's not an untypical road in that area. It's a local distributor road. It provides access to the adjacent retail units, Home Bargains and the like. Its width is about 6 to 7 metres wide, which is more than wide enough to enable vehicles to turn in and out of where the proposed access is located. Appreciate it's a busy area, it's a busy junction. Any concerns that you might have in relation to parking that might take place there should be alleviated by the fact that there's double yellow lines on both sides of both of those roads, Breck Road and Breckfield Road South. So, you know, as far as we're concerned, with the provision of some off-street car parking to support the proposed uses on this site, we don't have any concerns from Highways' point of view.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Are there any other questions, members? No? Therefore, can I move that the recommendation be approved?
Thank you, Chair. Any amendments? No. In which case, Chair, your vote, please.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Cardwell. 4. Thank you. Councillor Mallett. 4. Thank you. Councillor Prince. 4. Thank you. Councillor Maloney. 4. Thank you. Councillor Lake. And lastly, Councillor Key.
4.
Thank you. That concludes the voting on the application. The resolution is carried unanimously and the application approved on that basis. We move on to our next item, business number 7. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mike. Item number 7 is the Methodist Church, Banks Road, Liverpool 19, and we have the agent, Vidal Jackson, who's going to address the committee, and there are no speakers against this application. So can we ask the agent to address the committee, please?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
We can do, thank you, yes.
Okay, will the slides appear on the screen? Thank you. The application is for a change of use from Methodist Church, including the blocking up of the existing windows on all the elevations, removing the existing ramp and installing a new shop front along Banks Road. The application was submitted in September last year, and over that period of time we've worked directly with the planner and the Highways Officer to present this proposal to you today. The site is located at the Old Methodist Church on Banks Road in Garston. The proposal is to bring back into use a currently derelict and disused building and provide the local area with a small convenience store providing a variety of products to meet day-to-day top-up needs. The applicant has a number of small convenience stores located within Liverpool and holds an excellent reputation for providing local communities with relevant daily necessities. The proposal is for the local people within the direct vicinity, and it is intended for the people to be within walking distance of the proposal. This therefore reduces the use for any vehicular usage as stated by the Highways Officer in their report. A sequential test was carried out in order to deem that the proposal at Banks Road was not detrimental to the local Garston district centre. The applicant undertook a full assessment of alternative sites within the district centre, and despite the fact that the site sits just outside the catchment area for the proposal, on the basis of this information submitted, it is considered that the requirements of the sequential assessment were met. The proposed, next slide please. The proposed servicing for the store will be located along Aston Street, as you can see on the screen, with the relevant necessary highway signposting in order to eliminate any parking conflicts. The proposed delivery and servicing are to be planned that the deliveries will take place outside of the network peak hours between 8 and 9 and 5 and 6 and will be staggered so that no two deliveries arrive at the same time and will take place during the sociable hours between 9 and 5 o'clock. It has been well considered that all such activity is away from the existing bus stop at the front of the site located along Banks Road, and that the servicing is away from the Banks Road Country Primary School. Servicing will also be encouraged to gain access to Banks Road via Church Road, which in turn reduces any servicing vehicles passing the two primary schools in question along Banks Road. There is also a proposed internal bin store, and the servicing along Aston Road allows for easy removal of any generated waste, reducing any on-street visible waste or bins. The information above has been assessed by the Council's Highway Officer, who determines that on this basis it is considered that the suitable measures will be employed to reduce conflict with the school and peak time vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Next slide, please. So just the existing. Next slide, please. The application proposes to install an aluminium glazed shop front, which is typical within a modern day shop front refurbishment or installment. The installation of the large shop front glazing will allow transfer of light to the pavement, promoting active and passive surveillance between the internal and external parts of the building. Such measures would increase overlooking onto the public areas and act as a deterrent for the potential offenders in accordance with policy HD 20 of the UDP. The existing windows are to be removed and the openings are to be bricked up with materials to match the existing. Where windows are to be bricked up, the existing detailing of the heads and sills are to remain in order to retain some of the architectural features of the previous Methodist church. By bricking up of the existing windows, it will aid in reducing any noise generated by the shop, if there is any, whilst eliminating any overlooking issues. The main entrance off Banks Road is to be level access with an internal ramp in order to allow access for all. The proposed external alterations will be sympathetic to the building and the street scene and will not harm visual or residential amenity. In conclusion, the proposal presented today has been through a pre-application process with a full application submitted last year in relation to the points raised from our pre-application report. Over the period of the last 12 months, we have worked very closely with the planning officer and highways to address any queries and present to you today a proposal which is being backed by the planning officer for a recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Do members have any questions for the agent? Councillor Prince?
Hi, just a couple of questions. Within page 97 of our agenda. With it being a former Methodist church, I'm not sure about the idea of selling alcohol on the site either. And the second one is a little similar. Why actually do you need to brick the windows up? Wouldn't it be good to make it still obviously a former church in a historical sense, as opposed to turning it totally into a normal shop? I think the idea of a normal shop is a good one. I just have a problem about the off license.
Do you want me to answer that?
Can I just say to Councillor Prince, they would have to apply to the licensing committee for the alcohol licence to sell alcohol. It's not within the remit of this committee to discuss that. Councillor Maloney.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. My question is a continuation of the point that Councillor Prince mentioned, and it's about the blocking up of the windows. Now, I'm assuming here that the shop frontage will allow sufficient light into the main shop itself. I'm just wondering if it means that any staff rooms or storerooms are going to have their windows blocked, and does it really need to have all of the windows blocked? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Jackson, could you reply to that?
Yeah, if we can just go back to the last slide, which will show a floor plan. It's not loaded on my screen yet, sorry. Yeah, that's loaded on my screen now. So as you can see, in terms of blocking up, you've got toilets, bin stores, and back of house, which in terms would be best not to be visible from the street's edge. In terms of your question, as you can see on the elevation above, is there's a brand new shop front being installed with large amounts of glass, who are actually dropping the sill levels and opening up more of the shop front in terms of that. Regarding blocking up of the windows, I guess it allows for usable wall space. As you can probably understand, in a shop of this nature, it's very valuable to have plain wall space to be able to put shelves, units, fridge units, and I think it would be quite unsightly from the outside looking in to see the back of these, if that helps answer your query.
Okay, I think, yeah. Obviously, you need the space to have more goods on sale in the shop. Is that what you're saying? Yes.
Yes, in terms of that, yes. It allows more usable space for.
Hello. The applicant's undertaken a sequential test that demonstrates there's no other suitable alternative units within Garston district centre, and due to its limited size, there's no requirement at this point in time to undertake a retail impact assessment, considered that it's only 385 square metres. The sequential test has been assessed by our policy team, who are satisfied with its findings, and therefore the principle of a small local retail unit in this location is considered to be acceptable. The Head of Highways and Transportation has assessed the proposal and is satisfied that any vehicular trips can be accommodated on the local network, and given it will primarily serve the local community, most trip generation will be by foot, and therefore vehicular trips would be limited. All physical alterations are considered to be visually acceptable, with level access secured, as you've just discussed. In terms of the impact on the school, whilst there may be some minor disturbance during the construction conversion process, this will be of a limited time period and activity during the day which would not be significant so as to impact on the operation of the school. As Councillor Prince has said, concerns have been raised about the sale of alcohol. However, such matters are not controlled through the planning process and will be controlled through the licensing process. Any concerns about antisocial behaviour around the bus stop are considered to be limited, given that we'll be introducing an active frontage of significant glazing that will publicly police this area and hopefully minimise any such occurrences. The proposed opening hours of 10 o'clock are considered to be acceptable, as the main comings and goings will be directly onto Banks Road and away from residential properties. So in conclusion, Chair, we're happy that this is going to bring a vacant building back into use and provide a local retail facility, and we're happy to recommend it for approval.
Thanks, Stuart. Do members have any questions for Stuart? No? Can I move that the recommendation be approved then?
Thank you, Chair. Are there any amendments? No? In which case, Chair, your vote.
4.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
4.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett.
4.
Thank you, Councillor Cardwell. 4. Thank you, Councillor Mallet.
4.
Thank you, Councillor Prince.
4.
Thank you, Councillor Maloney. 4. Thank you, Councillor Lake. Thank you, and Councillor Key, please.
4.
Thank you. That concludes the voting, which is unanimous, and the application is approved on that basis. We now move to our last item of business.
Thanks, Mike. Our last item of business is 9 to 10 Oakfield Road, Liverpool 4. This was deferred at one of our previous meetings. There are no speakers for or against. Can I ask the planning officer to summarise this application and then allow members to ask questions or comments on it? Thank you. Who's going to take us through this application to summarise? I mean,
Beg your pardon. Beg your pardon, Chair. So the application is for to convert a property to form a 27-bedroom hotel, erect a single-storey extension to the front, and create a car park to the rear. The site is within the primarily residential area, and as such, the proposed use is considered to be acceptable. The impact of the development. Sorry.
well, it is, I mean, it has been to committee before and it was deferred to get further clarification in relation to some of the issues that were raised by members. And I understand, reading the report, that a 2-week consultation by the applicant was carried out with local residents and councillors, but as I understand it, reading the report, that there was no responses received. In terms of some of the conditions, there's some additional conditions that have been suggested in relation to the activity in the courtyard area, that there would be none between the hours of 1900 hours and 7 o'clock in the morning, and no music or audio visual be allowed at any time. So they're the changes and the clarification. I mean, I don't think it's worthwhile referring it again. I think, if members have got any questions.
Chair, the agent is here, if that's helpful to the councillors. She might be able to say a few words. Mine's still on.
Ask your question first, and then we'll ask the applicant to answer it. Yeah.
I've only got a couple of questions. Number one is smoking, the smoking area. Whereabouts is the smoking area going to be for the workers and the guests? Because it says on here they shall not smoke within the site curtilage or immediate vicinity of the entrances to the site. So where will like a smoker's bay be? Because when you have a little break period, there's bound to be a couple of staff that want to have a smoke. Yeah.
Thank you, Billy.
And the other question I wanted to ask was, I take it from being inside the bar and everything, there's a maximum of 54 guests and everything. So I take it now that no one will be coming in from just general outside to buy a pint and everything else.
Yep, so the smoking area is going to be located out to the front and the staff will be asked to go out there to just generally be all in the same area. Amy, if you wanted to go back just to the site plan, if that's okay. So we're discouraging anybody from going out to the rear car parks where the main residential properties are, obviously around the front areas, the high walls. And so in liaison with the client, we said that, you know, the staff and guests would be able to intermingle almost in the smoking area because smoking levels are right down at the moment. In terms of the bar, it will just be a residence bar, no walk-ins off the street will be allowed. It will only be guests of the hotel who can use that within the operational hours of whatever the licensing committee allows.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Lee. Just a moment, Councillor Prince has got his hand up.
It was just that last time this was deferred, it was fundamentally because of a collection of questions raised by all of the Anfield councillors, and effectively none of them were being answered properly. And it just seems to make a lot of sense to go back, give another couple of months to have a proper consultation set up between the applicants and local residents to try to iron out some of those problems. Reading through this and listening to Councillor Mara today, it sounds to me like a lot of those issues have been resolved, and I think it's a couple of months well spent to put it right, basically, where it wasn't right last time.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Prince, for that summary. Has any other members got any questions for the applicant? No? Okay, well, thank you. Can I, obviously, I mean, I think some of the concerns have been answered now, and listen to what Councillor for Anfield did say. Can I move that the recommendation be approved?
Thank you, Chair. Are there any amendments or further comments from members? No, in which case, Chair, your vote, please.
4.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
4.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett.
4.
4. Thank you, Councillor Mallett. 4. Thank you, Councillor Prince. 4. Thank you, Councillor Maloney. 4. Thank you, Councillor Lake.
Abstain.
Thank you, and Councillor Key.
4.
Thank you. That concludes the voting on this application. Of those members present, we have 1 abstention and the remaining members have voted in favour. Therefore, the motion of the Chair is carried and Councillor Lake's abstention will be recorded within the minutes of today's proceedings. That concludes today's meeting. I will therefore invite the Chair to make their closing comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I think it's been a long morning. I think it was now afternoon. So can I just thank everyone for their attendance, I think, and for your patience, really. We've had a few sort of breaks and interventions, but I think everyone has behaved really superbly, I think, and asked relevant questions. So thank you all for attending, and thank you for all the officers as well. Thank you. Have the best